Okay, summer school students, welcome. Let's jump right in today. You've all got that companion document, right? It's packed with useful words for your studies this summer. So our mission really is to do a deep dive. We want to unpack some key terms from that companion, figure out what they mean, how they work, and why understanding them is, well, pretty crucial for getting the most out of your material. You'll notice those little letters next to the words V for verb, N for noun, adjective for adjective, adv for adverb. They just show the different hats the word can wear its different forms. We'll touch on those as we go.
Exactly. Think of them as essential tools for understanding, for describing things, especially the complex stuff you'll be looking at. Knowing the different forms, verb, noun, whatever, just gives you more precision,
Yeah.
More tools for your toolkit.
Makes sense. So let's start with a group of words that are really about action, about how things or ideas, even people, get changed or directed or influenced. It's a pretty powerful set.
It really is. And influence, well, it often starts with just a basic change. Yes. Reinforce V. To give support to an opinion, an idea, a feeling, make it more solid. You're adding strength. And this has a noun form, reinforcement. N. Think about positive reinforcement in learning, maybe. And there's an adjective, too. Reinforce, adjective. That describes something that's been made stronger, like a reinforced concrete wall, or maybe a reinforced argument.
Yeah, you see that a lot in the readings, I bet. Authors using evidence, facts, examples to reinforce their points. So if reinforcing makes things stronger, what's the opposite? Making something weaker.
Good question. That would be undermine V. To undermine something means you're gradually making it less strong or less effective. It's often kind of subtle,
Yeah.
like chipping away at its foundations.
Okay, so like presenting information that doesn't directly disprove an argument, but maybe it just undermines the credibility of the person making it, or casts doubt, feels less direct than attacking it head on.
It is. It's definitely less confrontational, maybe more insidious sometimes. And speaking of tricky influence, this next one is really important, especially when we think about media, communication, all that stuff.
Ah, you must be talking about manipulate.
Got it in one. To manipulate, V. It means working skillfully with information or systems, maybe even people, to get the result you want. The key things here are the skill involved and the intention, aiming for a specific outcome. And this one has quite a few forms. You've got the noun manipulation N for the act itself, and manipulator N for the person doing it, plus the adjective and adverb, manipulative, adj, and manipulatively, adv.
Yeah, that word manipulate, it always feels a bit heavy, doesn't it? When you hear about data being manipulated or someone using a manipulative tactic, it suggests it's deliberate, often kind of self-serving, using skill to influence things. How's that different from shape? Because shaping can be good, right? But manipulate, not so much.
That's a great point. Yeah, shape can be neutral, even positive, like shaping pottery, But manipulate almost always has this slightly negative feel. It suggests the skilled handling is maybe for your own benefit, perhaps not entirely openly or fairly. It's really about control, achieving a specific result through careful handling, less about just guiding natural development. And often, that careful, skilled handling is aimed very specifically.
Aimed at a target.
Exactly. To target something means to make it have an effect on a particular limited group or area. And the group or area you're aiming at, that's the target. N.
Right, you see this everywhere. Marketing, obviously targeting certain customers. But in your readings, you might see how, say, a new policy is designed to target a specific problem, or how propaganda aims to target certain groups in society.
Precisely. So if you look at this whole group, alter, shape, reinforce, undermine, manipulate, target, they really give you a whole spectrum of how influence works, from simple change right up to very skilled, directed efforts to get a specific result.
They really do. It's a useful set. And thinking about influence, it naturally leads us to information, doesn't it? How it's created, shared, how we perceive it. Because information is so often the tool of influence. Let's move on to some words in your companion that deal with information, perception, and creation.
Yeah, absolutely critical area today, and something you'll definitely find in your studies. We can start with, well, the most basic tool for getting information online, the browser, N. It's just that computer program, that finds information on the internet and shows it on your screen. Firefox, Chrome, Safari, that kind of thing.
Simple, yeah, but fundamental. Can't do much online without one. Okay, so once you have information, how do you get it out there? Spread it around.
You disseminate it. To disseminate V means to spread information or ideas to as many people as possible, make it widely known, and the process itself is dissemination. N.
Right, like the dissemination of research findings.
Right.
Or the really rapid dissemination of news, or sometimes misinformation on social media. It's about spreading it wide. Now, sometimes information isn't stated directly, it's more hinted at.
That's when something is implied. To imply V is to suggest that something is true, but without actually saying it directly. And the thing that's being suggested. That's the implication, N.
Ah, okay. So an author might imply how they feel about a subject through their tone or word choice, even if they never explicitly state, I believe X. And you, as the reader, have to pick up on the implication.
Exactly. It takes a bit more careful reading, a bit more critical thinking. And speaking of things not being quite straightforward, sometimes information seems designed to make you believe something that isn't actually true.
That sounds like it could be misleading.
Precisely. Something that's misleading is likely to make someone believe something false. It points you in the wrong direction, basically. The verb form is mislead, VE, and you can present information misleadingly, add via.
Okay, but how is being misleading different from, outright lying, actively trying to make someone believe a falsehood?
Ugh. That's where deceive V comes in. To deceive someone is the action of making them believe something that is not true. It feels more intentional, more active. The noun is deception, N. And you have the adjective and adverb forms, deceptive and deceptively. Something can be deceptively simple, looks easy, but it's not. Or someone might engage in deliberate deception.
Okay, I think I get it. So misleading describes the information itself. It could lead you astray, maybe even unintentionally sometimes. Whereas deceive is the act of fooling someone, often using misleading information to do it. One's a quality, the other's an action. Makes sense. So with all this potential for things being misleading or people trying to deceive, how do you work out what's actually going on?
Well, you have to try and detect it. To detect V means to notice or discover something, especially something that's maybe not obvious, not easy to see or understand. The act of finding it is detection N. Of course, the person whose job it is a detective N. And things can be detectable, possible to find, or undetectable.
Like trying to detect bias in a news report or detecting a pattern in some data. It's about noticing things, uncovering them.
Okay.
And in online discussions or even panel debates where you have lots of information flying around, you often need someone to guide things, keep order.
Right. You need a moderator.
Okay.
That's someone whose job is basically to control a discussion between people. Keep it on topic, make sure everyone gets a fair say. The action they perform is to moderate the discussion.
Keeping things running smoothly. Okay. Shifting focus slightly within this information realm.
Yeah.
How do we talk about whether something like a story or a picture or even AI output actually reflects the real world accurately?
We ask if it's realistic. Something described as realistic, agere idea, shows things as they appear or as they are in real life. The underlying idea or quality is realism N. And of course, the opposite exists.
Right.
Unrealistic. And you can present things realistically, audible, or unrealistically, audi.
Got it.
Yeah.
So a documentary filmmaker might strive for realism, while maybe a wildly optimistic business plan might be dismissed as unrealistic. It's about matching up with reality as we see it. And where does all this information, all these representations, all these ideas actually come from?
Well, they are generated. To generate V means to produce something or cause it to come into being. This word is especially relevant now with all the talk about AI. You have the noun forms, generation N, which can mean the act of producing, or a group of people born around the same time, and generator N, the thing that does the producing. And the adjective generative is everywhere now, right? Like generative AI, systems that generate new text or images.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay, so this whole second group browser, disseminate, imply, misleading, deceive, detect, moderator, realistic, generate, these are just fundamental. They give you the language to talk about how we find information, how it spreads, how it can be tricky, how we verify it, manage it, judge it, create it. Crucial for navigating everything you read and see.
Totally. They help you analyze not just what's being said, but how it's being said, and maybe even why it's being presented that way. It's about critical engagement.
Right. Okay, one last shift. Let's look at a final set of words from your companion.
All right.
These touch on people specifically, and ideas like independence and dealing with challenges.
Yeah, turning the focus inward a bit, and also on how we describe groups. We can start with a term for a stage of life. Elderly, adjects, it's generally used as a polite way to say that someone is old or, getting old.
A respectful term. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a really powerful concept about independence.
Autonomy, N. This is fundamentally the ability or the opportunity to make your own decisions without being controlled by anyone else. Self-governance, essentially. If someone or something has this quality, they are autonomous, adapté, and they act autonomously.
That's huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Personal autonomy, the freedom to make your own choices in life.
Yeah.
But you also hear it used in politics, right? Regions seeking political autonomy, or even like drones that operate autonomously. It's about independence at different levels.
It's a really core concept. Shows up in politics, philosophy, psychology. You might well see it in your readings. Now, sometimes protecting your autonomy or just reaching a goal means you have to actively push back against something difficult or problematic.
You have to combat it.
Yes. As a verb, to combat V means taking action to reduce or prevent something bad, or to fight against it. It also works as a noun, combat, N, meaning the fight itself, like in warfare.
So you might talk about efforts to combat climate change or to combat discrimination or combat disease. It implies an active struggle.
Exactly, an active fight against something negative. And what's the quality you need to keep up that fight or to bounce back when things get tough?
That sounds like resilience.
One of my favorite concepts, resilience N. It's that ability to recover quickly from difficulties, to become strong or happy or successful again after a setback, sometimes called toughness or buoyancy. Someone who has this is resilient, adjure, and they handle challenges resiliently. Adjure.
Being resilient feels so important, not just for individuals, like getting through tough times personally, but for whole communities, right? Or even ecosystems, bouncing back after a disaster. It's about adapting, persevering.
It really isn't, thinking about it, connecting back to the earlier words, your own resilience and your sense of autonomy, they're actually key defenses against being easily influenced or manipulated by misleading information you might encounter.
That's a great link. Yeah. So these final words, elderly, autonomy, combat, resilience, they really speak to the human side of things. Experience, independence, strength in facing difficulties.
They cover fundamental states and also really vital capacities we need to navigate life and its challenges.
So that was our deep dive into some key words from your summer school companion. We looked at terms about change and influence.
How we deal with information and perception.
And words related to people, independence, and perseverance.
And remember, understanding these words properly, their different forms, their specific meanings, it's not just about learning vocabulary lists. It's about getting the tools you need to really analyze arguments, understand complex ideas, and think critically about all the material you'll be engaging with.
They really are the building blocks for deeper understanding. And as you go forward with your summer school work and you see these words pop up in your readings and discussions, maybe keep this closing thought in mind.
Yeah, think about this. We talked about words like manipulate, deceive, and the need to detect that sort of thing. So how does actively building your own resilience and protecting your own autonomy actually help you navigate all that information and influence out there? How does it empower you? Something for you all, the summer school students, to maybe reflect on as you continue your studies.